The Arizona sun didn't just beat down on Juniper Whitley's shoulders. It punished. She stepped off that stagecoach onto the dusty main street of Copper Creek, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The year was 1875, and she had nothing left but a single trunk and a desperate hope. The hope that she could finally outrun the lies that had chased her all the way from Boston. Copper Creek was a rough town born from the Silver Rush, a line of wooden buildings staring each other down across a road of dirt and secrets. Juniper pulled her simple bonnet down, trying to look respectable, invisible. At 22, she felt 100. Back home, she'd had a future, a fiancé, a family name, until she found him with her own cousin. When she ended it, he didn't just break her heart, he destroyed her. He wove a web of vicious lies, painting her as a woman of loose morals, a blackmailer. And in the high society of Boston, a lie was as good as the truth. Her own family turned away. Her only escape was a letter from her uncle, a teaching position in a forgotten corner of the Arizona Territory. A new start. She just had to find the mayor's office. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the rowdy laughter spilling from the Silver Spur saloon. She was a schoolteacher now. She had to be proper. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was gruff, important. Juniper turned. A portly man in an expensive suit, a bushy mustache hiding his mouth but not his sneer. Mayor Hollister. Her uncle had described him perfectly. "Yes, sir, I'm Juniper Whitley," she said, forcing a smile. The mayor's face darkened, his eyes narrowing. "Whitley? You wouldn't be Bartholomew Whitley's niece, would you?" Juniper's stomach turned to ice. "Yes, sir. He's my uncle." The mayor let out a low mutter, just loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "Well, I'll be damned. We weren't told about that part." His voice was getting louder, a performance for the curious onlookers. Juniper could feel their eyes on her, feel her cheeks burning with shame. "Is there a problem, Mayor?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Problem?" he boomed, taking a step back. "Oh, I'd say there's a problem. We got a telegraph yesterday, Miss Whitley, a warning, all the way from Boston." The blood drained from her face. It couldn't be. He had found her. He had reached across a continent to ruin her all over again. The mayor puffed out his chest, his voice carrying down the entire boardwalk. "We can't have a woman of questionable virtue teaching the children of this town. Copper Creek has standards." Whispers erupted, slithering through the crowd. A woman in a garish purple dress pointed a finger. "She's the one, the harlot from the papers, seduced 3 men, they said." "That's not true," Juniper cried, her voice breaking. "Those are lies." "We've heard enough," the mayor declared, his face a mask of false piety. "The position has been filled. You're not welcome here, Miss Whitley." Then a sharp shove from behind. She lost her balance, her ankle twisting with a searing pain as she stumbled off the boardwalk. She landed hard in the dirt of the street. Her trunk crashed beside her, the latch springing open, spilling her life's meager possessions into the filth. And the crowd laughed. "Go back where you came from," someone yelled. The shame was a physical thing, hotter than the Arizona sun. Her new start, her last hope, had lasted less than 5 minutes. As she scrambled to gather her things, tears blurring her vision, a new sound cut through the jeers. The slow, rhythmic beat of horses' hooves. The crowd parted, and a tall figure on a magnificent chestnut stallion rode into the center of the cruel circle. A star-shaped badge glinted on his chest. "What in God's name," a deep voice demanded, "is going on here?" "The town marshal, Archer Everett." He dismounted in one smooth, powerful motion. He was tall, lean, but broad-shouldered, with the kind of quiet confidence that made loud men like the mayor seem small. His hat shadowed a face weathered by the sun, a strong jaw, and the most piercing blue eyes Juniper had ever seen. "This is town business, Marshal," the mayor blustered, trying to regain control. "We're just dealing with an unwelcome visitor." Archer Everett took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving the mayor's face. His voice was dangerously quiet. "By dealing with, you mean ganging up to publicly humiliate a lone woman?" He let the question hang in the air. "Last I checked, Mayor, that's not how we do things in Copper Creek." He didn't wait for an answer. He turned to Juniper, and his expression softened. "Are you hurt, miss?" She couldn't speak. She just shook her head, even as her ankle throbbed in agony. The marshal knelt beside her in the dirt, ignoring the gasps from the crowd. He carefully gathered the last of her things, a small book of poetry, a locket from her mother, and gently closed her trunk. Then he did something she never expected. He extended a calloused hand. "Let me help you up." Hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. His grip was strong, steady. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing. When she winced, putting weight on her injured ankle, his brow furrowed with concern. "You are hurt." "It's nothing," she whispered. "Just a twist." He nodded once, then he turned to face the silent crowd, his hand still holding hers. It was a declaration, a line drawn in the dust. "I don't know what stories you've heard," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "But in this town we don't condemn folks without evidence. We don't push women into the dirt, and we certainly don't stand around laughing at another person's suffering." His gaze swept over them, and one by one, they looked away, ashamed. "Anyone with a legitimate complaint can bring it to my office. Otherwise, I suggest you all find something better to do." The crowd melted away. Only the mayor and a few of his cronies remained, their faces flushed with anger. "You're making a mistake, Everett," the mayor warned. "That woman is trouble." Archer Everett's eyes were like ice. "The only trouble I see right now, Mayor, is you." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Without another word, he picked up her trunk with one hand, and with his other arm, he gently supported her. He led her away from the scene of her humiliation, leaving the mayor sputtering in the street. As they walked, the world swimming around her, she finally found her voice. "Thank you, but you don't know me. You shouldn't have." "I know enough," he said, his voice low. "I know nobody deserves that." He looked down at her. "I'm Archer Everett." "Juniper Whitley. I was supposed to be the new teacher." His jaw tightened. "That's nonsense. This town's been without a teacher for months. There are 30 children who need educating." They reached his office, a simple wooden building with a jail attached. He set her trunk on the porch and opened the door. "Please, sit. Let me look at that ankle." She hesitated. Being alone with a man she just met. It was improper. But he had just been her only defender in the world. She limped inside. The office was neat, orderly. He knelt and gently examined her ankle. His touch was surprisingly tender for such a large, capable man. "It's not broken, but it's swelling. You need to stay off it." He returned with bandages. "May I?" She nodded, her face flushing as he carefully removed her boot. As he wrapped her ankle, she had to ask, "Why are you helping me? You heard them?" He finished tying the bandage and looked up, his blue eyes holding hers. "Miss Whitley, I've been marshal here for 5 years. I've learned that rumors and the truth are rarely even acquainted." He stood, crossing his arms. "But I have to admit, your uncle's letter about you was unusual." Juniper froze. "My uncle's letter? What did it say?" Archer's expression was unreadable. "It said you were a fine teacher, well educated, but it also said you had a habit of uncovering things, things that powerful men wanted to keep buried." This was a lie. Her uncle's letter was simple, begging for a chance for his disgraced niece. What was the marshal playing at? "My uncle never wrote that," she said, her voice trembling. Archer held her gaze. "Didn't he? It's funny. The mayor seemed to think so. In fact, that's what he was yelling about right before you stepped off the stagecoach. Not about Boston. He was yelling about a nosy teacher who asks too many questions. A cold dread washed over her. This wasn't about her past. It was about her future. Someone in Copper Creek didn't want a teacher here, and they were using her scandal as the perfect excuse to get rid of her. Before she could process this, a sharp knock echoed through the office. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was the sound of a new player entering the game. Archer opened the door to a tall, elegant woman in her 50s. She had eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Parkman," he said, a note of surprise in his voice. "Word travels fast in this town, Marshal," she said, stepping inside without an invitation. Her gaze landed on Juniper, taking in the bandaged ankle and the tear-streaked face with a flicker of something that might have been pity or calculation. "I heard what happened on Main Street. Disgraceful." She approached Juniper, a warm smile suddenly appearing on her face. It didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Eleanora Parkman, my dear. I run the boarding house, the only respectable one in town, and I would be delighted to have our new school teacher stay with me." Juniper looked from the woman to Archer, confused. "But," the mayor said. "The mayor," Mrs. Parkman said, waving a dismissive hand, "is a fool. But he's a fool who listens to his wife. And his wife, as it happens, is my oldest friend." She gave Archer an approving nod. "Besides, our marshal here has excellent judgment. If he's willing to stand up for you against the whole town, that's more than good enough for me." Relief was so sudden and sharp it almost made Juniper dizzy. "Thank you, Mrs. Parkman. That's very kind." "It's settled, then," Archer said, though he was watching Mrs. Parkman with a strange intensity. "I'll bring Miss Whitley and her trunk over once she's rested." "I'll have a room ready," Mrs. Parkman said, turning to leave. She paused at the door, her back to them. "And don't you worry about this warning from Boston, dear. Some stories are just that, stories. Other secrets, however, the kind buried right here in Copper Creek. Those are the ones that can get a person killed." And with that cryptic warning, she was gone. Juniper stared at the empty doorway, a chill creeping up her spine. What had she walked into? This was more than just a town that didn't want her. This was a town with a secret the last teacher might have found. Archer let out a long breath. "Mrs. Parkman is a force of nature. Her husband helped found this town. She has more power here than the mayor ever will." He looked at Juniper, his expression serious. "But she's right. You need to be careful." "What secret?" Juniper whispered. "What happened to the last teacher?" "Her name was Sarah. She left town suddenly about 2 months ago. Said she was getting married and moving to California. But—" he hesitated. "But what?" "The letter she sent her family never arrived. She just vanished." The air in the small office suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. She hadn't just been offered a job. She had been given a puzzle, and maybe a death sentence. "So the mayor doesn't want me here because he's afraid I'll find out what happened to her," Juniper realized. "He's terrified," Archer confirmed. "Which means whatever Sarah found, it leads right back to him." He looked her in the eyes, a silent question passing between them. He was offering her a choice. She could run, take the next stagecoach out and never look back. Or she could stay. She could fight. Not just for her reputation, but for a woman she'd never met. For the truth. And looking at the steady resolve in Archer Everett's face, she knew she couldn't run. Not again. "The mayor said the position was filled," she said, her voice stronger now. "He lied," Archer said with a grim smile, "and I'm going to make him unlie it. You're going to be the new school teacher, Miss Whitley, and you and I are going to find out what really happened in Copper Creek." Later that afternoon, Archer escorted her to Mrs. Parkman's handsome boarding house. As promised, a clean, comfortable room was waiting for her. He set her trunk by the bed. "I'm going to see the mayor. I'll make it clear that you're staying, and that you're under my protection." For the first time, he looked uncertain. "Are you sure about this, Juniper? It could be dangerous." "After today, Marshal, I'm not sure I have much left to lose." A small smile touched his lips. "Archer. My name is Archer." "Archer," she repeated. "Why are you doing all this for me?" He paused at her door, his hand on the knob. "Let's just say, I don't like bullies, and I don't like secrets that get people hurt." With the tip of his hat, he was gone. That night, Juniper lay awake, her ankle throbbing in time with her racing heart. She had come here for peace, for anonymity. Instead, she'd found a conspiracy, a missing person, and a town held hostage by fear. And in the middle of it all was the town marshal, a man who looked at her not with judgment, but with a fierce, protective light in his blue eyes. She was terrified. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone, and that felt more dangerous than anything. The next morning, Mrs. Parkman arrived with a breakfast tray and some news. "Marshal Everett paid the mayor a visit late last night," she said, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. "You have your job, on a trial basis." She sniffed. "Just the mayor's way of saving face. School starts Monday. Gives you a few days to prepare." "What about the people?" Juniper asked. "Will they accept me?" "They'll accept what the marshal tells them to accept," Mrs. Parkman stated simply. "And they need a teacher. You prove you're a good one, and the rest won't matter." Later, Juniper made her way to the one-room schoolhouse at the edge of town. It was dusty and neglected, the bookshelves nearly bare. As she stood in the silence, the door creaked open. It was Archer, carrying a large crate. "Mrs. Parkman said I'd find you here. These belonged to the last teacher, Sarah. She left them behind." He set the crate on the teacher's desk. It was filled with books. Shakespeare, Emerson, volumes of poetry, not the sort of thing you'd leave behind if you were starting a new life. "Thank you," Juniper said, her hand resting on a worn copy of Jane Eyre. "This is helpful." "I spoke to the school board," Archer said, leaning against the doorframe. "That's to say, I spoke to the mayor. You have the job for 1 month. If you can prove yourself, it's yours permanently." "A formality," she said, remembering his words. "He's saving face." "Exactly." His confidence was a strange comfort. "You seem very certain I can do this." "I'm a good judge of character, Miss Whitley." "Juniper," she corrected him softly. He repeated her name, letting it roll off his tongue. "Juniper, it suits you." An unspoken energy crackled in the dusty air between them. It was too soon, too complicated. But it was there. He cleared his throat. "I should let you work, if you need anything. Anything at all. My door is always open." After he left, Juniper sank into the teacher's chair, her mind reeling. She opened the top book in the crate. Tucked inside the front cover was a small, folded piece of paper. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was a drawing, a crude map of the town. But it wasn't the town she recognized. There were extra lines, strange symbols. One building was circled in red ink. The assayer's office. And beside it, a single hastily scribbled word: poison. The rest of the week was a blur. Juniper cleaned the schoolhouse, created lesson plans, and tried to ignore the suspicious glances she received in town. On Monday morning, 30 children of all ages filed into her classroom, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The whispers had obviously reached them. An older boy, the son of one of the mayor's friends, stood up immediately. "My pa says you're a bad woman from Boston. He says you're not fit to teach us." The room went dead silent. Every eye was on her. This was her trial. Not in 1 month. Right now. She took a slow breath, her heart pounding. "Sometimes people hear stories and they get frightened," she said, her voice calm and steady. "But a story isn't the same as the truth. The only way to know the truth about a person is to see their actions, to judge them for yourself." She picked up a piece of chalk. "And that is our first lesson, the difference between a fact and a rumor." By the end of the day, she had them. The children were hungry to learn, and her patient, kind manner won them over. The whispers died down. Over the next few weeks, a quiet routine set in. She taught during the day. In the evenings, she and Archer would meet, sometimes in his office, sometimes for a quiet walk after dark. They spoke of the case, of the map, of the word poison. They pieced together what little they knew. Sarah had been asking questions about the silver mine, about why its output had suddenly dropped, even though the miners were working harder than ever. The assayer, a nervous man named Thompson, had left town a week before Sarah vanished. The mayor owned the largest stake in the mine. The pieces were there, but they didn't fit. Not yet. One evening, nearly a month after her arrival, she was walking home when she heard hoofbeats behind her. It was Archer, his face grim in the fading light. "Juniper, I need to talk to you." He dismounted, holding a folded piece of paper in his hand. A telegraph. "I wrote to an old friend of mine, a lawman in Boston. I asked him to look into Charles Pennington." Her breath caught in her throat. "You investigated me." "I investigated him," Archer corrected gently. "I had to be sure." He handed her the paper. With shaking fingers, she read the message. It cleared her name completely. Pennington had been caught in another scandal, this time with the judge's daughter. His web of lies had unraveled. Her family's name was restored. Tears of relief streamed down her face. I never thought anyone would know the truth." "I knew the truth," Archer said quietly, stepping closer. "I saw it in your eyes the first day we met." The space between them vanished. The sounds of the town faded to a dull hum. "Juniper," he said, his voice low and intense, "I've been trying to tell myself this is just about the case, about my duty as marshal, but it's not." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, I can't stop thinking about you. I know this is all too fast and too complicated, but I have to know. Do you feel it too?" Before she could answer, a man stumbled out of the alley beside them. It was the deputy, his face pale with fear, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Marshal," he gasped, clutching his side. "It's the assayer's office. There's been a fire." He collapsed at Archer's feet. "And they found a body inside." Archer knelt beside his fallen deputy, his face a mask of cold fury. The man was alive, but barely, a knife wound, deep and vicious. "Get Dr. Miller," he yelled to a man across the street. He looked at Juniper, his eyes dark with a terrible certainty. "Go to the boarding house, lock your door. Do not open it for anyone but me." "But Archer—" "Go, now," he commanded. She ran, her heart pounding in her ears, the smell of smoke now thick in the air. The assayer's office, the place on Sarah's map, poison, fire, a body. The pieces were slotting together into a picture of pure horror. Back at Mrs. Parkman's, she locked her door and paced the small room like a caged animal. Hours passed. Each footstep on the stairs made her jump. Finally, a soft, familiar knock. "Juniper, it's me." She threw the door open. Archer looked exhausted, his face smudged with soot, his shirt torn. He stepped inside and leaned against the door, the fight seeming to drain out of him. "The deputy will live," he said, his voice ragged. "He stumbled upon someone setting the fire. They tried to kill him, to silence him." "And the body?" she whispered, dreading the answer. "It's not Thompson, the assayer. It's a drifter. Someone they paid to set the fire, then killed to tie up loose ends." He ran a hand through his hair. "But we found something in the ashes. The fire didn't take everything. We found the assayer's logbooks. He pulled a singed leather book from inside his coat. The last few months. The silver yields he was recording for the mine owners were a lie. He was cooking the books. The mine is failing, Juniper. It has been for months. So the mayor, he's been faking the reports to keep investors from pulling out. He's been paying the miners, keeping the town afloat with money he doesn't have. He's desperate. It all made sense. Sarah must have found out. She probably confronted the mayor, and he panicked. He killed her, didn't he? Juniper breathed. He killed her to keep his secret. I think so, Archer said grimly. And now he's burning the evidence and killing anyone who gets in his way. He knows we're close. He's getting sloppy. He looked at her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was replaced by a familiar fire. Tomorrow the circuit judge arrives. I'm going to arrest Mayor Hollister for the murder of Sarah Jenkins and the attempted murder of my deputy. He'll deny everything, Juniper said. It's his word against a burned logbook. Which is why I need you, Archer said, his voice dropping. Sarah left a crate of books at the schoolhouse. I need you to go through them. Every page. She was smart. If she knew she was in danger, she would have left something else behind. A letter, a note, some kind of proof. Of course, she said without hesitation. But Archer, he's the mayor. The whole town trusts him. They'll never believe he's a killer. They'll believe it when they see the evidence, he said. And they'll believe it when you stand with me. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. I know I have no right to ask this of you, to put you in this danger. You didn't ask, she said, her voice steady. I'm already in it. We're in it together. The hope that dawned on his face was like the sun breaking through the smoke-filled sky. He leaned in, and this time, nothing stopped him. He kissed her, a kiss born of fear and desperation, and a connection so powerful it left them both breathless. It wasn't a promise of a happy future. It was a pact, a vow to see this through to the end, no matter the cost. Get some rest, he whispered against her lips. Tomorrow, we end this. But as Juniper searched the books late into the night, she found something that changed everything. It was a small diary, tucked into a hollowed-out book of sermons. It was Sarah's. She read with growing horror. Sarah had discovered the mayor's fraud, but she hadn't confronted him. She had told someone else, someone she trusted. The final entry was chilling. He knows I told. He's coming for me. I was wrong to trust him. I should have gone to the marshal. But how could I? How could I tell the marshal that the person trying to kill me was his own brother? Juniper's blood ran cold. Archer's brother. He had never mentioned a brother. The diary entry was dated 2 months ago, the day before Sarah vanished. His own brother. The words echoed in the silent room. Who was he? Why was he here? Was Archer protecting him? The trust she had placed in him, the feeling that had blossomed between them, now felt like a fragile, hollow thing. Every act of kindness, every protective gesture, was cast in a sinister new light. Was he defending her, or was he controlling the investigation, keeping it pointed away from the real killer? She felt sick. The man who had saved her, who had believed in her, might be the monster she should have been afraid of all along. She had to get out. She had to warn someone. But who? The whole town was in the mayor's pocket, or terrified of the secret power that truly ran things. She was alone again. Worse than alone. She was trapped. She shoved the diary into her dress pocket. She couldn't let Archer know she'd found it. Not yet. She had to pretend everything was normal. The next morning, the town was buzzing. The circuit judge had arrived. Archer found her at the schoolhouse, his face set and determined. "Did you find anything?" he asked, his blue eyes searching hers. She had to lie. "No, nothing. Just school books." She prayed he couldn't see the terror in her face. Disappointment flickered across his. "It doesn't matter. The logbook is enough. The judge is meeting with me and the mayor in an hour at the town hall. It's time." He reached for her hand. "I want you there." "Why?" she asked, her voice tight. "You're the reason this all came to light. You're the one who wasn't afraid. When this is over, the town needs to see who the real hero is." His words, which would have made her heart swell just yesterday, now felt like a spider's web, pulling her deeper into his deception. She had no choice. She walked with him to the town hall, the diary a heavy weight against her ribs. The mayor was already there, sweating and blustering. The judge, a stern-faced man named Pettigrew, sat behind a large desk. "Marshal," the judge said, "you've made a very serious accusation against the mayor of this town." "I have the evidence," Archer said calmly. He placed the singed logbook on the desk. "The assayer's records, falsified for months. Mayor Hollister has been running this town on a lie, and when his schoolteacher, Sarah Jenkins, found out, he silenced her." "Lies!" the mayor roared. "This is a fabrication. The marshal has a personal vendetta." "Is that so?" the judge said, peering at Archer over his spectacles. "And what could be the source of this vendetta?" Before Archer could answer, the door to the office swung open. A man stepped inside. He was handsome, well-dressed, with the same piercing blue eyes as Archer. But his smile was cold, predatory. "I believe I can answer that, Your Honor," the man said, his voice smooth as silk. Archer stared at him, his face draining of all color. "Caleb," he whispered, "what are you doing here?" "Cleaning up your mess, little brother," Caleb said with a smirk. He turned to the judge. "My name is Caleb Everett. I'm a business associate of Mayor Hollister's, and I'm the one who sent the telegraph from Boston about Miss Whitley." Juniper's world tilted on its axis. Caleb, Archer's brother. He looked at her, his eyes lingering on her with a chilling familiarity. "You see, Judge, my brother has a weakness for lost causes, for beautiful women with tragic stories. I knew as soon as she arrived he'd fall for her. He always does. And a man in love is a foolish, predictable thing." He placed a leather satchel on the judge's desk. "The marshal is right about one thing. The mine's profits have been redirected, but not by the mayor. By me. I own the controlling interest. The mayor was just following my orders." "You," the mayor sputtered, his face turning purple. "You promised you'd protect me." Caleb just laughed, a cold, empty sound. "And I am, by giving the court a much more compelling story." He pointed a finger at Archer. "My brother discovered my business dealings. He was furious. He tried to blackmail me. When I refused, he decided to frame Mayor Hollister, to destroy my investment and ruin me. He manipulated this poor, disgraced woman into helping him. He's the one who set the fire at the assayer's office. He's the one who murdered Sarah Jenkins when she threatened to expose him." It was a brilliant, horrifying lie. It twisted every truth into a weapon. Archer just stood there, stunned into silence by his brother's betrayal. The judge looked from one brother to the other, his face grim. "Marshal Everett, you are hereby relieved of your duties and placed under arrest." Two deputies stepped forward, taking Archer by the arms. He didn't resist. He just looked at Juniper, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. A plea for her to believe him. But how could she? His own brother. The diary in her pocket felt like a block of ice. Had she been a fool? Had she been nothing more than a pawn in a war between two brothers, one a thief, the other a killer? Caleb walked over to her, his smile triumphant. "Don't worry, Miss Whitley, I'll take care of you. The real villain is gone now. Copper Creek is finally safe." And as he said it, she saw it, a flash of pure evil in his eyes. And she knew. The diary wasn't the whole story. The real monster wasn't the man in chains. It was the one who had just walked free. They locked Archer in his own jail cell. Caleb Everett, the town's new savior, stood with the mayor on the boardwalk, accepting congratulations from the duped townspeople. He had spun a masterful tale, painting Archer as a vengeful, lovesick fool, and himself as the heroic businessman who had uncovered the plot. Juniper felt a cold, hard knot of certainty form in her stomach. Caleb was the killer. The diary hadn't lied. It just hadn't told the whole truth. Sarah trusted the wrong brother. Caleb must have been the one she confided in, and he was the one who silenced her. He had framed the mayor just enough to create chaos, then swept in to frame his own brother for everything. He was a snake, and everyone was charmed by him. Everyone but her. She had to do something. She had to get to Archer. Under the guise of collecting her things from the marshal's office, she slipped past the new deputies. Archer was sitting on the cot in his cell, his head in his hands. He looked up as she approached, his face a ruin of despair and betrayal. "You believe him," he said, his voice hollow. It wasn't a question. "No," she said, her voice a fierce whisper. "I don't." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Juniper. He's the one, isn't he? He killed Sarah." Archer nodded slowly, the shame heavy on him. "Caleb. He's always been like this. Charming on the outside, rotten on the inside. He came here 6 months ago, investing in the mine. I thought he'd changed. I wanted to believe he'd changed." His voice broke. "Sarah came to me, worried about the books. I told her to be careful, but I never suspected Caleb. Then she came to him, thinking he would help. That was her mistake." "The diary," Juniper said, pulling it from her pocket. "She wrote it all down. She held it up to the bars." His eyes widened as he read the last entry. "I never knew," he whispered. "She never told me." "He's going to kill you, Archer," Juniper said urgently. "He can't leave you alive to tell the truth. He'll arrange an accident, a prisoner trying to escape." "I know," he said, his gaze hardening. "He's tied up all the loose ends but one. Thompson, the assayer. He's the only other person who knows Caleb was running things. Caleb paid him to disappear, but he won't have killed him yet. It would have been too risky. He's got him stashed somewhere." "Where?" "There's an old abandoned cabin about 5 miles north of here," Archer said, his mind working fast. "We used to play there as kids. It's the first place I'd think to hide someone." He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "Juniper, I need you to ride. Get to that cabin. Find Thompson. He's our only chance." "How?" "Caleb will have people watching me." "Mrs. Parkman," Archer said, "you have to trust her. Tell her everything. Her husband was a good man. He would have never stood for what Caleb is doing to this town. She won't either. And you? I'll create a distraction. Buy you some time." He gripped the bars, his knuckles white. "Be careful. Caleb is more dangerous than you can possibly imagine. He won't hesitate to kill you, too." "I'm not afraid of him," she said, and she meant it. The fear had burned away, leaving only cold, clear purpose. She ran back to the boarding house and found Mrs. Parkman in the parlor, her face like a thundercloud. "I know," the older woman said before Juniper could even speak. "I knew that Caleb Everett was a viper the moment I laid eyes on him. Archer is a good man. His only fault is wanting to see the good in people who have none." Juniper quickly explained about the assayer, the cabin. Mrs. Parkman didn't hesitate. "I'll have my stable boy saddle the fastest horse. You'll go out the back. I'll go talk to the judge. Pettigrew is a stern man, but he's not a fool. That story Caleb told had too many neat edges. I'll plant a seed of doubt." Within minutes, Juniper was on horseback, riding hard out of town, the desert wind whipping at her face. As she crested the first ridge, she heard it. A single gunshot echoing from the direction of the town jail. The distraction. Her heart leaped into her throat, but she spurred the horse on, faster and faster. She had to make this count. She found the cabin, dilapidated and barely standing. Inside, huddled in a corner, was a terrified, rail-thin man, Mr. Thompson, the assayer. "Marshal Everett sent me," she said, breathless. The man burst into tears of relief. "He's a killer," Thompson sobbed. "Caleb Everett. He made me change the books. He killed that poor girl. He was going to kill me next." "He still might," Juniper said, helping him to his feet. "We have to get you back to town. You have to tell the judge everything." But as they stepped out of the cabin door, a voice stopped them cold. "I'm afraid that won't be happening." Caleb Everett stepped out from behind a stand of cottonwood trees, a pistol in his hand, his cold smile firmly in place. "I have to admit, Miss Whitley, you're more resourceful than I gave you credit for, following my dear brother's little plan to the letter. He had known. He had let her lead him right here. It was a trap." "It's over, Caleb," Juniper said, positioning herself slightly in front of the trembling assayer. "Too many people know." "On the contrary," Caleb said, raising his pistol. "There are just 2 people too many. Here. Now. Once you 2 are gone, it's just my word against my brother's. And he's a desperate fugitive who just shot a deputy trying to escape. Who do you think they'll believe?" The gunshot she'd heard. It wasn't Archer creating a distraction. It was Caleb finishing his frame job. He was going to kill them right here and leave no one left to tell the truth. This was the end of the line. "You're a monster," Thompson whimpered from behind her. Caleb's smile widened. "I'm a businessman. Sarah didn't understand that. She had to be removed. My brother, with his tiresome morals, he had to be removed too. It's just tidying up, nothing personal." He leveled the pistol at Juniper's heart. "You first, I think. You've caused me the most trouble." Juniper's mind raced. There was no escape. He was too far away to rush, and the gun was steady in his hand. Her entire journey, the humiliation, the fight, the hope. It was all going to end here, in the dust, killed by a man with eyes like his brother's. But then she saw it, over Caleb's shoulder. A flicker of movement in the rocks above the cabin. It was Archer. He wasn't in a cell. He wasn't shot. He was here. His face was grim, a rifle in his hands. He must have overpowered the deputies and followed Caleb. He put a single finger to his lips. He was waiting for a clear shot. She had to give him one. She had to keep Caleb talking. "So that's your plan?" she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Kill us all? Steal the mine? And what then? You think you can just walk away?" "Of course," Caleb sneered. "I'm a respected investor. I brought prosperity. They'll probably name the town after me." "They'll name a jail cell after you," a voice boomed from the rocks. Caleb spun around, firing a wild shot toward the sound of his brother's voice. That was the moment. Archer fired. The shot was perfect. The pistol flew from Caleb's hand as the bullet ripped through his wrist. He screamed, clutching his shattered arm. In that split second of chaos, Juniper didn't hesitate. She grabbed a heavy piece of firewood from the ground and swung with all her might, striking Caleb across the back of his knees. He crumpled to the ground, howling in pain and rage. Archer scrambled down the rocks, his rifle trained on his brother. "It's over, Caleb." Deputies arrived moments later, followed by Mrs. Parkman and Judge Pettigrew himself. They had found the deputy Archer had supposedly shot, unharmed, tied up in a closet. Archer had faked the escape to lure Caleb out. It had all been a desperate, brilliant gamble, and it had worked. Thompson, now safe, told the judge everything. The fraud, Sarah's murder, Caleb's confession at the cabin. The whole sordid story came pouring out. They took Caleb away, his handsome face twisted into an ugly mask of hate. Judge Pettigrew turned to Archer. "Marshal," he said, his voice heavy with apology, "it seems this town and I owe you our lives, and you, Miss Whitley, a profound debt of gratitude. Your courage has saved us all. Back in town, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The lie that had held Copper Creek hostage was broken. Mayor Hollister was disgraced, his career over. Archer, his name cleared, stood beside Juniper on the boardwalk where her nightmare had begun. The townspeople watched them, their faces a mixture of shame and awe. "It's finally over," she said softly. "It is," he said. He took her hand, his grip strong and sure. "Juniper, after all this, after everything you've been through, I know the timing is terrible, but I have to say it." He turned to face her, his blue eyes more serious than she'd ever seen them. "I was lost before you came here, just going through the motions. You brought the truth back into my life. You brought life back into my life." His voice was thick with emotion. "I love you, Juniper Whitley, and if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve." Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were tears of pure joy. After the lies, the betrayal, and the terror, here was the truth, the simplest, most beautiful truth of all. "Yes," she whispered. "Oh, yes." 5 years later, Juniper Everett stood on that same boardwalk, a new, expanded schoolhouse behind her. She watched her husband, Marshall Archer Everett, lift their laughing 4-year-old daughter into his arms. Another child was on the way. The town had thrived, built now on honesty instead of secrets. Her name was cleared not just in Copper Creek, but in Boston as well. She had gone back once, on her own terms, to show them the woman she had become. She had been pushed from this boardwalk, a broken, disgraced girl. But in the dust of the street, she had been found. She found a home. She found justice. And she found a love as strong and true as the Arizona landscape itself. A second chance wasn't just something she had been given. It was something she had fought for, bled for, and won. What started as one woman's nightmare ended up saving an entire town. If you enjoyed this story of justice and second chances, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments below, what's the biggest obstacle you've ever had to overcome?